entities that don't have Lexus.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you can take your seats, please. I hope you enjoyed the first session of the day. In case you've only joined the conference today, my name's Louis Yakumi, and if you don't know who I am, then you probably walked into the wrong conference by mistake. So I think the first session was very interesting. I enjoyed it, although I was sitting there red-faced throughout because I was this was the wrong session to be sitting next to my colleague Catherine, who works with me. And it really highlighted that perhaps I'm not such a great boss. So a few lessons that I learned in the first session. But this time we're talking about after-sales and service parts. And this is something that affects us all. Even if you're in the production logistics, we're going to be hearing about how maybe there should be more coordination, collaboration between production and logistics. But even if whoever you are in this room, you're likely to have had issues with service parts and after sales. So hopefully you'll find an interesting discussion, a solution to all the problems you've ever had when you've taken your car in for a service, and you'll understand what happened all the time. But after sales and service parts is a part of the industry that will be disrupted as much by all the technology that's coming in, as much as any part of the industry. The connectivity, digitalization, and so on. So it'll be interesting to hear from the speakers now about what they're doing, what their companies are doing, what issues they're facing, and how the after-sales and service parts supply chain is going to develop over the next few years. Been very fortunate in getting a great panel together this morning with three great car makers represented, Toyota, Volkswagen, and BMW. And they're leading after sales and service parts in North America. So I'm looking forward to some great presentations. And as usual, the usual format, we'll hear the three presentations, then we'll have time for a Q&A at the end of the session. A quick reminder, if you've collected the evaluation forms earlier, I think they were in the delegate bags. If you're crazy enough to be leaving early today, please complete the evaluation forms. Your opinions are very important to us. They are for any conference. Perhaps for a conference this is just our second event, the evaluation forms have even more relevance so we can learn how we can develop this event. We hope that you've enjoyed it and we can develop it in the right way. So please complete the evaluation forms if you're leaving early. Otherwise, wait till the final session because we've got a great couple of sessions this afternoon about how to think differently if you're going to be in the supply chain industry. And then the final roundup where we've got, again, a great panel for a Q&A and discussion about, the future of automotive logistics and supply chain. But as I said, we've got some great speakers for this session. So I'd like to hand over to the first speaker of this session, to Neil Swartz from Toyota North America. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Lee. Well, good morning. I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot over the past couple of days. Quite a bit about autonomous vehicles and how they can get you lost, and a little bit about Christopher. Didn't realize that he had a sense of humor, so, and a great haircut. I actually voted for Christopher, I have to admit. And this morning, I thought that previous session was great, talking about companies with a director of happiness. My associate leaned over and said, "That makes you the Prince of Darkness." So I've been called worse, but I did hear a few people talk about having the best job in their company. And I've thought about that statement and listening to the discussions yesterday and today. And I believe that you can think that you have the best job in your company, but it doesn't make you a great leader unless the people who work for you believe that they have the best job in the company. So something to think about when we talk about leading our people and developing our people. I just wanted to open with that. My role at Toyota is the opposite of Steve Brown, who's also in the audience today. I'm kind of the after-sales guy, and he is the pre-sales guy. And so he takes care of all the production parts. I take care of all the service parts, and we do work together very well. This conference, this portion of the conference was talking about after sales, service and parts. And Louis, I'm going to use you as an example, if you can come up here for just a second, because I want to talk to you just for a minute about what I think this conference is really about. Come over here, please. It won't hurt, I promise. You won't?
Models,
okay, so just put up your hand. Stand over there, put up your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So he's just proved to me, Louis, thank you, you're done, that what this conference is really about is about change. And I don't know if you noticed it, but as I pushed on Louis' hand, he pushed back a little bit. And try this with your colleagues. Don't try it with your spouse, because you already know what will happen. But do try this with your colleagues. You'll find that people who have a natural resistance to change. And I don't know that there's anything more important as leaders that we have to work through is how to get people to accept it. So one of my favorite quotes, and I do have a few, I'll only use maybe one today, is that in a rapidly changing world, standing still is the fastest way to move backward. And I don't know about your company, but I will tell you at Toyota, we are surprisingly resistant to change. And actually, one of the things I do say about Toyota is that nothing has more momentum than the status quo. So, but we do work through change, and we are going through a lot of change, as we talked about earlier, and we're going to talk about some of the things that we see changing in the future. We and the service parts side of this business made a decision a few years ago that we needed to move from being a logistics organization that moves parts to being a customer-first organization that uses logistics to meet the customer's needs. And that's kind of the mindset change that we've gone through and how we have viewed our world going forward. And some of the things I'm going to talk about are some of those changes that we've made to accomplish that. So some of the complexities in meeting this customer service levels and getting ready for the future, this is actually very timely for us because we're going through an exercise right now where we're starting to develop our next set of what we call mid-range plans, which will take us all the way up to 2025. And to do that, we're working not just in the US, but globally to try to determine what does the service and parts business look like in 2025. And as a result, what are the changes that we need to be prepared for? What are the changes we need to start working on right now? What are those challenges? And there are many, many. We have a very long list, but just to highlight a few here I think that are relevant for today's discussion. The first is, of course, meeting customers' expectations. If we are going to be customer first, it is about their expectations. Some of the key words that come to mind as we were starting down this journey is talking about immediacy, right? Ed and I were talking last night about how we've all been programmed by our friends at Apple, I guess, to expect immediacy. How many of you went from sliding your card at Home Depot to having to put it into the slot with the chip in it? And what was your first reaction? How long it took, right? Because you could slide your card and you were done, or you could put the chip in, you got to wait 8 or 10 seconds for it to be approved, right? And it was, what, forever. Worst technology in the world. But this is where our mindsets are, and you don't have to be a millennial to have that sense of immediacy. Transparency. Transparency, you can describe this a lot of different ways. Yesterday we talked a lot in the breakout group about being able to have visibility or visualization of what's going on in the supply chain. I think that's true of our customers too. They have an expectation that they will be able to know what's happening with their part or their vehicle at any time, whether it's being produced or being serviced or whatever. And I think it kind of goes to that issue of trust. And as our former President Reagan used to say, trust but verify, right? And I think that's what customers want. They want that reassurance that they know what is happening all the time. And then personalization. A lot of what we've talked about here with technology is trying to better understand our customers, whoever they may be, and what is that level of personalization that they're looking for. You know, if we were at this conference several years ago, the buzzword was mass customization, right? Well, mass customization is already here. We're living it every day because we get what we want, how we want it, where we want it, when we want it, and usually at the price we want because we can shop everything based on those criteria for price, and that's, I think, what a lot of us do. So those are some of the customer expectations that are just going to continue to ramp up, and there'll be more. Talk about delivering on service and then the cost. And this maybe sounds a little bit like an advertisement for Toyota, but let me first I have to do a quick survey here. How many of you, you can just hold up your hands on green cards, red cards, doesn't matter. Just hold up your hands. How many of you have a Toyota or Lexus product in your garage or in your family? Okay, see, the guys from Honda didn't raise their hand. I didn't see that. But quite a few of you, I was almost 50%, so thank you for the support, because you'll be happy to hear some of the things I'm talking about, because we're trying to make your life better and as a customer. And in the Toyota way, one of the things that we try to do is we try to deliver what the customer's looking for, not what we need within our own business. In other words, we take care of the customer first and take the cost out later. So if delivering to a customer multiple times a day is what they need, then that's something we're going to have to find a way to do and then Kaizen the cost out. We price to market, or we deliver the service to the market and then take the cost out. That's kind of how we look at our world. So we have to look beyond our current model as we go into the future to think about continuing to reduce lead time, which is of course really important, or eliminate it altogether. So first let me talk about reducing lead time. One of the things that we have done, and we actually stole this idea from my friend John down there at BMW, and that is providing same-day service. So same-day service, somebody was talking about in the tire business, is pretty common. It's very common in the aftermarket. It's not common with OEMs. And even though John and I have been doing this now for 5-6 years or something like that, if you've been doing it for 5, I've been doing it for 4, because we waited to see if it worked. And we're now servicing over 55% of our units in operation now have access to same-day parts. That's pretty phenomenal if you think about it, because we move from weekly orders with our dealers to daily orders. Now we're moving to now we have same-day service, same-day orders, and who knows, it may be actually multiple times a day in the coming years in some markets. So that's one way of reducing lead time and providing better customer service. Another is to eliminate the need for lead time. Well, that would mean I have to have the part on hand. Well, Mr. Wante over here manages 350,000 part numbers, of which our dealers stock about 1%. Now, they do a pretty good job of servicing most needs with 1%, 3,500, 5,000 part numbers for the average dealer, but there's a lot of parts they don't have. So we can provide overnight service, we can provide same-day service, but what could we do in markets where we can't provide that level of service, or to even eliminate that need for that same-day service by helping the dealers to carry the right inventory? And I won't go into great detail here, but what if in the future, instead of each dealer looking at their inventory and setting their parameters to stock parts based on what they have sold in the past, look at it as an aggregate to see what's being sold in the market, and then maybe work with 1 or 2 of the dealers to become a stocking location for us, where we could provide them with parts that they could provide to the other dealers in the market on an hourly basis or an as-needed basis. Something to kind of take it to that next level and leverage the technology that's already exists today. So this is one example of one of the things we're looking at. Also trying to get dealers to do things like we've just introduced last year. It is a first in the industry, and John can copy me if he wants. But this would be we offer dealers open dealer returns, which anybody who's been around dealerships knows that's always a big issue, is how do you return the parts that you purchase. We've effectively given our dealers a consignment program where they buy it, they're able to then return it to us pretty much as a pretty open return for them. A couple of limitations, but not much. And this is giving the dealers the opportunity to stock it whatever they think they might need, instead of just basing it purely on historical sales. Pursuing expansion opportunities, we continue to expand. It's not always brick and mortar. We expand through things like same-day service. We expand where we think that we can service our units in operation. We just opened 2 new PDCs here in the Southeast, one here in Atlanta, one in Orlando. First 2 PDCs for us to open in 11 years. But we saw the need because of our Lexus customer base is so strong here in the Southeast that we needed to provide them with a greater level of service. And we strategically located those where we could provide the best same-day service as well. And responding to what's special, and I say what's special that we're talking about here is special activity parts. It's a nice way of saying recall parts and parts needed for technical service bulletins and parts needed for special warranty policy adjustments and things like that. It is not a passing fad in our industry. It's here to stay. I think all the OEMs here would agree with that. 4 truths about campaigns, recalls, or special activity parts. One is that they're non-forecastable. You can't forecast for them. Second is you can't plan for them. The third is that you can't use your existing supply chain very well because this is a huge bubble moving through your snake, and it doesn't work very well. And the fourth is that when they happen, customer expectations are at their peak. Not a recipe for success. So something that we have to work on, and we have some ideas for that, and if I had time, we could share some of those as well. So what else is going on in the E-world? Well, we have to prepare for new requirements. There's a major initiative going on throughout Toyota today. It's called Customer 360. It looks at the traditional shop, buy, own life cycle of customers, and realizes that today customers are on their own journey. They decide when they enter any of the part of this cycle at any time, and they can move back and forth between it because people have multiple vehicles in their garage, and they have the access because of the internet and so forth to be able to move in and out of the ownership experience or the buying experience or shopping or whatever that might be at any time. And what our role is to make it as easy for them as possible. Any point where they enter, we have to make it a comfortable experience, an easy experience for them. So to accomplish this, we are taking a look at customers not on a static basis like we used to, like what was last month's sales reporting, who bought a vehicle, who had a car service, that kind of information, to more dynamic, as much real time as we can. And we have, like many of you and many of us have been talking about, have a lot of data, and it's a matter of how do we use that data in a real time basis. E-commerce, another big opportunity for us. We are the last to the dance of the OEMs. I know Volkswagen's been very strong in this area, and others as well. Probably the biggest change that we're introducing, and something that we're going to try, we haven't started it yet, we're just in that phase 1 where we're rolling out e-commerce platforms to our dealers, who, by the way, when we surveyed our dealers, 73% of them said they don't like their existing e-commerce platform. So we knew there was an opportunity there for us to provide a better customer experience. So while we're kind of ramping up on search engine activity and so forth, but the phase 2 is what we hope to be doing by this time next year, and that is offering direct shipping to the customers or to the location that the customers are asking for. Most of the OEs today, in fact, I think all of them that I'm aware of, ship only through their dealers. And while we're starting with dealers, we always will have that option. We're going to allow the customer to choose if they want to ship directly to them. And behind the scenes, the customer won't know whether it's coming from the dealer or coming from one of our warehouses. To them, they're working always with the dealer. And the dealer, in this case, of course, maintains the relationship with the customer. The dealer sets the prices, they make the sale, and they collect the profit. Our role is to provide the product and the logistics. So a little different approach for us. We'll be either really successful or we'll fail fast, but we're gonna try it. Let's move on to some of the future technologies that we're taking a look at that are helping shaping the aftermarket. To me, listening to all the last couple of days, it's not about the newest technology. Actually, it's about how you use the technology. The greatest example of that, of course, is RFID. I've heard it mentioned a couple of times. It's very exciting. It's been around since 1943 when the Allies used it to protect their planes. But we found new ways to use the technology, and that's great. So we can't forget about what's already out there. It's not about the technology. It's about how you use it to solve the problem you have. Too often we look at it as some of this technology as a solution looking for a problem, and we should instead be looking at our problems that need a solution. Automation, inside and outside the warehouse. Very simply, we're very interested in automation. People are most surprised when they come to a Toyota facility how little automation we have. But we do recognize that we can eliminate a lot of the what we call muda, which in our case is often conveyance or incidental work related to any process. Sometimes as much as 50 to 70% of the process is involved in conveyance. So if we can find some solutions that are through automation that will help us with that, that is low-hanging fruit for us. Usable data, I talked about a little bit about our Customer 360, but it's all about accessing the data that's in our data lakes. We're trying to move from all this information to, like everyone else, using it for not only knowing our customers better, but to predict behavior of our customers, predict behavior of our markets and our dealers and so forth. Digital supply network, I mean, what this really means is if we can do a better job with our data and do a better job with forecasting and managing through the use of the technology, we believe we can get to the point where we have no obsolescence. That's the perfect world. It's a great goal. I gave it to Ed as his objective for next year. He signed up for it. 3D printing. You know, I was a skeptic of 3D printing. I've learned a little more about it recently, and it scares me. Very frankly, I think it's great potentially for customers if they can get the part they need right away. That's great. It could help reduce a lot of logistics costs. But what worries me a little bit about it is if it's so easy to access, then what value are we bringing? I could take anything and I could put it in my 3D scanner. I could scan it and I could produce it all the time, you know, sitting in my basement in my boxer shorts. But, you know, not an image you want, I realize. But, you know, what happens to the intellectual property side of this? So it's a big question out there, and I think it's something that we all have to be thinking about, especially as suppliers of products. Predictive analytics, again, collecting the data, whether it's our own internal data or it's data that comes off the vehicle through telematics. It's definitely that, you know, that era is here. The question is, how will we use it to better the experience? Overall, what we're talking about here is that, you know, we can continue to be customer first as long as we remember that whatever we do has to be for the customer's benefit first before our own benefit. And somebody used the term yesterday, I don't remember exactly who it was, and said, you know, it's not about pillars of your organization, it's about the priorities of your organization. And I think that was very well said. And our priority is, again, to be customer first. So as we look to next generation vehicles, you know, there's going to be a lot of different alternative power trains out there. And we know this is a given. They're already out there today. There won't be just one overriding powertrain like there has been in the past. You're going to continue to see vehicles with multiple powertrains combinations out there. It's a very unpredictable and finicky customer. So we do need to recognize that that's just going to be part of how we do business. Wrap it up by just talking about the fact that as we look to new ways to enhance the customer experience through the technology that's out there and technology that's coming, this is a great opportunity for us to not only use the new technology, but to use this technology, find new sources of income, new sources of revenue. You know, if we do this wrong, we could lose customer loyalty very easily. Customers are not very loyal today. If we do it right, we could really increase our customer retention. And increasing our customer retention, not just for service and parts, but for that repurchase, is really the ultimate goal. So that's our focus, is how do we use the technology to retain our customers. I have to put a plug in, although somebody already mentioned it, took the thunder away, about how we are also utilizing technology in our logistics world with the Project Portal on the West Coast, introducing Class 8 trucks that are hydrogen fueled, and we're pretty excited about that project. And the last element here that we were asked to speak about is how do we work together from a service and parts and manufacturing side? How do we work together? You know, 3 years ago, we announced One Toyota, all moving to Dallas. As I said, it's not about a place, it's about a mindset, about a new way of doing business for us. We're very happy that in the logistics world, we knew there were opportunities out there. 3 years ago, we made this announcement about coming together. It probably wasn't within 2 months that our manufacturing side, Steve Brown's team and my team, met face-to-face, sat across from each other, and came up with probably, 20 different ideas. We brainstormed together. We're actually implementing a few of those. Some of them are still out there for us to grab onto. A couple examples is one is the logistics optimization. We've learned a lot about how to work with our suppliers, our parts suppliers, and how we can help them to be better. They can help us to be better by providing more consistent standards and delivery expectations. Synchronizing our logistics. We're working on a major activity now in our Tier 1 part centers where we've moved over the years from monthly to weekly type of shipping with our suppliers to daily, and now we're moving into hourly. And it's a real exciting time. Great opportunity for us to right-size our inventory and keep us within our existing footprint in a lot of our facilities. Another one is integrated logistics. This has been a four-phase strategy that started pretty quickly after the announcement. It started with how we're addressing contracting with our carriers, using new standards, or for us it was new standards. It was adopting the standards that manufacturing had been using. We've been working with manufacturing side. They've now taken over our inbound logistics, and which is great because they have a lot of resources and knowledge about full truckload route planning and been able to apply it to our business, saving us a lot of money. LTL planning, we also have some opportunities there. And then the fourth phase will actually be what we all think about, and that's joint logistics, where we have service parts on the same trucks with production parts, and it's coming very soon. So a lot of exciting things that are coming out of our One Toyota, and I thought it fit very well for what I wanted to share with you today. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Neil. Thank you very much, Neil. A great presentation, covered a lot of things. In fact, you've ruined my job a little bit because some of the questions I wanted to ask you, you've covered them already in your presentation. But more importantly, you know, Chris is a great editor, a great moderator, and a good-looking young man. But I don't want him to be funny. You can't be the funny guy. That's all I've got left. So. Next up, I'd like to welcome our next speaker, a good friend of automotive logistics, Anu Goel, Executive VP of Group Aftersales and Service for Volkswagen Group of America. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. How are you? All right. Just a couple things up front. I'm not a big fan of having my name on slides because here's what happens. If you know who we are, it's usually because something went wrong. Right? So if you don't know who we are, that means we're doing our jobs. And the other thing that always strikes me when we're at these conferences, you notice people in our positions are usually well south of 6 feet tall. Right? And you just get cut off at the knees all the time. That stuff happens. So if you take a little bit of what Neil was talking to you about, I've got a slightly different take on what we're doing here today. And when we talk about keeping parts service high in a shifting world, right? I believe that was the title of the presentation. First question I'd ask you to think about is, how do you define parts service? What's the metric? How do you know? What is it? Is it fill rates? If it's fill rates, is it facing fill out of the depot close to the dealer? Is it system fill coming somewhere out of the network? Is it time to delivery, errors, damage, the whole bit, right? So the first question is, what are you trying to accomplish? Second, who are you defining as your customer? And I think it's easy for everyone to say it's the vehicle owner. The question to me becomes, are your processes set up and are you treating your dealer as the customer? Are your metrics dealer-oriented or are they customer-centric? Because you're going to get two different systems, you're going to get different measurables, you're going to get different performance depending on how you go about it. The approach we take is our dealers are our business partners to service the vehicle owner who is the ultimate customer. If you take the approach that the dealer is a business partner, it will change how you think about what you do with them. So we're going to talk a little bit about, because Neil brought up several great topics, same-day delivery. We get two people on the stage that are doing it. We're not doing it. I'll walk you through a little bit where we are. We're watching very closely, but I think there's some interim steps that we as a company have to do before we get to that. So those are the two questions I'd ask you to keep thinking about as we go through some of these slides. All right, I figured I'd start with giving you a little bit of idea of the universe we deal with. And I think most of the OEs, when they plot it out this way, will find that it's very similar. We at Volkswagen, defined as Volkswagen and Audi, so that's the Volkswagen Group. Porsche is located down the street in Atlanta, but currently not part of our network. We have about 210,000 orderable part numbers. Right? Orderable is it's in the catalog, a dealer can go order it. In any given year, we sell about 110,000 of those part numbers. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you we're stocking all 210 or we're stocking all 110, but that's roughly the universe of what we have. 1,600 of them make up 50% of our sales and are about 20% of our inventory. Right, so when Neil was talking about dealers holding 3,000 or 1% of the parts roughly, those are the ones you want them holding, right? And we'll get to that in a second. 6,000 parts make up 75% of our sales and 40% of our inventory. And you can pick any metric you want along the way here. And then 112,000 part numbers are about 100% of our sales during the course of a year, and it's about 90% of our inventory. So what it tells you is we got 10% of our inventory on stuff that didn't sell in the prior 12 months. Is that good or bad? Right, now I'll give you some metrics because we're measuring our dealers. We get a feed from our dealers every day of what they have, what they sell, and there's some interesting stuff going on that helps you identify where the opportunities are. So if you're a dealer, and benchmarking that's out there will roughly tell you that a best-in-class dealer with off-the-shelf fill is about 85%. Customer shows up at the dealership, 85% of the time, best-in-class dealers have the parts available on the shelf to service that vehicle. Right? Now you could argue is that good or bad, but that's roughly where it is. And with a curve like this, getting above 85 is pretty tough. Okay, I mean, it takes a lot of inventory investment space, et cetera. So our approach is we want the dealers to have the parts on the shelf 85% or more of the time when the customer comes in so they can service that vehicle same day. And if they don't have it, we'll get the part to them overnight before they open the next morning so they can get the customer out by lunchtime. In a nutshell, that's the approach. And that's where same-day delivery could add some benefit to us as well. If they don't have it, get it to them same day so you can get the customer out that day. Right? But the question is, when do you get the part to the dealer? How long does it take to service the vehicle, et cetera? There's some numbers out there, just ballpark. About 75% of customers come into dealerships before noon, and it takes a service tech half hour to 45 minutes to diagnose the issue. All right? So if you're getting them a part same day, let's say 2, 3, 4 o'clock, is it going to be repaired that day? So you got to work with the dealers on their opening hours. Right, which when you get to customer expectations, you get to fleet customers, why aren't dealers open longer hours? Right? So that's where, to me, the approach becomes, are you thinking of your dealers as business partners in servicing the vehicle owner? Right? So that's just roughly where we are. Okay? Now, just a little bit more specifics on the parts growth, right? Because everybody hears about common platforms in production. The red line shows you the Audi parts growth since 2010, and the blue line shows the Volkswagen parts growth, and the gray is the common parts that are between the two brands. Audi's part numbers have grown 50% in the last 5 to 6 years. Right, the number of vehicles we're launching, right, depending on how you want to set up your service for a vehicle, an average car is going to have anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 service part numbers. Right, the common stuff, everybody knows, but think about the stuff that is unique when you're launching new models or you're launching a brand new vehicle line. Right? It's the sheet metal. It's the powertrain. It's the big, ugly stuff that takes up space, that tends to be lower volume, that makes life difficult on the logistics side. But that's the world we're dealing with. Volkswagen's been going along at a slightly lower clip, but if you look at our product plan for Volkswagen in the next couple of years, this thing will start joining the Audi growth rate. And the common parts just, they kind of plot along, right? So is our network set up to handle this, right? So what I always say is just by common platforms, part number growth is going to accelerate. It's just the way it is. The days of having a vehicle that has a 5 to 7 year life with no change is gone, right? People lease a vehicle, 2-year lease, 3-year lease, that lease is up, they come back. Do you think they want the same exact looking car in a different color, right? They want something new and different. And when you start looking at what's inside these vehicles too, the technology, it's unbelievable. So that's a little bit of what's going on real world today. So when we get to what we're talking about, keeping parts service high in a changing world, here's a couple things that I think impacted, and I titled it, What Keeps You Up at Night? It's an increased complicated world, and it's not going to get any easier. We circled a few things on here, but you see the parts proliferation with the arrow that we talked about. What impact will ride sharing have on our business? Right? Who's the vehicle owner? What are the expectations of these people in terms of servicing vehicles? Is it the same as fleet? Is it the same as a soccer mom? Right? Do we fully understand the needs of the ride-sharing community? Gray market, as our volume increases, there's more counterfeit parts. Right? Now, you can argue, if we get back to, are we keeping parts service high? Are they helping us or are they hurting us? Right? They're obviously taking business. Right? But is it keeping vehicles serviced? A couple of the ones, same-day delivery is on there, right, with the drones. I was talking to someone yesterday. I think it's part of the Subaru pitch with the drones that they're keeping yard management. I think it's fantastic. If you take a look at where we are with diesel cars, right, the cars we bought back that are in storage yards, is there some benefit of how we use this technology to know what's going on? Technology is obviously going to change, keep things going. We got government regulations, extended warranties. What do extended warranties do to a customer's expectations on parts availability? First of all, from a retail business, it becomes a warranty sale. Right? It impacts profitability, it impacts cash flow, it impacts the investments that we can put into the business. But what's a customer's expectations of us on a warranty versus another issue? Recall transparency that Neil mentioned. This is a biggie. All right, everyone's familiar with Takata today. Right? If you get a letter that says your car is unsafe to drive, and you call a dealer and they tell you, I don't have a part, or I'll see you 6 months to a year from now, how do you feel? That's an industry issue. Right? You go down, you buy a car from Neil, you buy one from John, you're going to have the same issue. Right? So how do we manage this? I fully understand what the government's doing, and I agree with it. I want to know what the issue is with the car as soon as you know. The days of, we'll tell them when I've got 1 million parts on hand and we can go live are gone. Right? So how do we use technology? And we'll get to some of the solutions that we're talking about here in a second. A big one for us is tariffs, right? What's going on with the government today? The bulk of Volkswagen's manufacturing is in Mexico. How comfortable are we with what's being talked about with NAFTA? Right? The bulk of our Audi parts come from overseas. What's going to happen there? What's that do to the cost of ownership? Will that drive investment in this country for service parts? Right? Dual tooling, who do you use, all that stuff. Collision avoidance. This one I think is interesting. There's estimates out there that collision avoidance systems in cars will take service parts sales down 10 to 30%. Okay. What's the highest margin service parts that are out there? Happens to be that one, right? Electric cars. There are studies out there that say electric vehicles will reduce parts sales 10 to 40%. Maintenance, light repair stuff is basically gone. Right? So is there anything on here that anyone feels really good about? Right? Whoever replaces me will have to deal with it, but we'll just have to figure, we got to start thinking about how we address these things, right? So I think Neil's mentality and the Toyota mentality is very interesting, right? Put the service in, then take the cost out. Take care of the customer, then look for, so that's how we got to start thinking. We got to start thinking, what are the opportunities here? Electric cars, well-known electric car company out there I've talked to a couple times, they got a very interesting approach. They view a car as a commodity. Everything on that car, hard part, is a commodity. They could care less where you get it. Walmart, it doesn't matter. They view their value add as the software. So what they're thinking about, because the technology will set the vehicles apart, I mean, you get design and all that stuff, but do they care if you buy a steering wheel or a seat from Walmart or from one of their dealers? Their mentality is, I don't care. My value add is the software. So they view logistics, service parts logistics, as delivery of software to the customer. I mean, just think about that. What we're talking about is moving hard parts, warehouses, same-day delivery, et cetera. They're talking about delivery. Their value add is on software delivery, and they're trying to figure out how to get that delivery to the customer wherever they are on a moment's notice, through the cloud. Right? When I talk about a game changer, that's it. Right? The rest of this stuff becomes, there's other people out there that do this stuff better than individual OE networks do. Right? That stuff gets scary. It's also kind of, makes you think. All right, so what are some of the things that we can talk about that we can do, right? We've got economy parts. Good, better, best philosophy on parts, right? That opens up a wider range of suppliers, a wider spec of parts to take care of customers' different age vehicles, right? Why do people always worry about this? They believe if I've got a brake pad, good, better, best philosophy, it's going to rob the higher spec, higher margin part, putting it on a new vehicle, right? The difference in the brake pads just becomes thickness and its durability. Do you want one that'll last 5,000 miles, 10,000, or 15? Give the customer the choice. A big one for us is localization. 73% of the parts that we sell in this country come from overseas. We've got the Atlas going into Chattanooga, Passat's out of there now. There'll be more local manufacturing going forward. It will create more of a local supply base, but we will still have 50, 60, 65% of our business coming from overseas. So when Neil talks about lead time, there's an opportunity. Now, you get back to the old, if you got 50-day lead time and you're 95% on time, that's better than 10-day lead time, 10% on the time, right? Because you can predict and things like that. But all that stuff comes together. Bench strength, I know, was one of the work breakout groups yesterday, the think tank thing, so I think is fantastic. Just a biggie. How many people went to school to do what they're doing today? Tells you a lot about higher education, doesn't it? I didn't go to school to do what I'm doing today. So where do you hire the talent of the future? Who's out there? Those are the kinds of things that concern me. When I went to school, they said, I had a finance professor that said the average person is going to work for 3 companies in their life. I spent my first 23 with one company and was thinking he's an idiot because I saw 30 on the horizon, defined pension plan, life's good, I'm done. I'm on company 3. Right, he's looking pretty good. I'm hoping it's not 4, we'll see. But spot on. The same professor is telling the students at the University of Michigan Business School today that they're going to work for 10 companies in their life. 10 companies. Look at your comp plans, right? They're transferable. We've allowed these things to happen. So if you bring someone straight in and you know they're going to leave and you're investing the time and money in them, what are you doing? Right? So how are you thinking, where are you getting people? Dual income families. We're logistics organizations. To get to these types of levels, you want people that have field experience, make better decisions going on. If you have a family that's not, with this other partner, is not relocatable, how do you develop them? Do you limit their career when they're one of your high pots? I mean, all the stuff you guys were talking about yesterday, this is today, right? We've got 2 of our highest pot individuals. We've figured out ways to give them field experience without relocating. You want to keep them, they're potential replacements for me or my direct reports down the line, right? That's what you got to start thinking about. Reman parts, that's always a biggie. You'll see benchmarking data that'll tell you anywhere from best-in-class reman companies have 10 to 25% of their sales are on reman parts. It helps parts availability. The question you got to ask yourself is, why do you do a reman? Do you do it to reduce warranty costs? Do you do it to increase parts availability? Do you do it to increase sales? There's 3 main reasons to do it. The answer is all 3. The trick is, how do you do it? Right? But that's a biggie. You have to have the logistics to bring the cores back. You got to have the engineering. Our mothership is starting to think through reman. It's always interesting. Do people view reman as a lower quality part? In my prior life, reman always had higher quality than the original because it fixed issues in the original OE part. Right? But yet it's 60% of the cost. Right? Huge opportunity there. Do we segment our networks? Do customers need sheet metal and powertrain parts overnight? Do they need them same day? If you consolidate those and get second-day delivery on some of those types of parts, you can bring your inventory down on safety stock on those parts 30, 40, 50%. Invest that money on the higher sellers on the curve I showed you. So you take your fill rate on those parts up, because everyone sitting on the stage is 97, 98% fill. Right? We're all there. Right? And it'll always move around. But what are you doing in some areas to separate yourself? Connected car, Neil talked about. How do you get information that can help you plan? Big data, I hate that term. Everyone's got data, Do you know what to do with it? Are you using even 10% of what you have access to? Or are you putting systems in place to get more data that's just going to sit there? Right? Figure out how to use what you got first. Well, figure out what you need first, and then figure out how to get it if you don't have it, then figure out how to use it. I think we get lost in this stuff, right? Construction ag business is way ahead of us on using predictive analytics, as is heavy truck, on servicing vehicles. I mean, there's some heavy truck companies out there that that we're benchmarking that do an outstanding job of getting information off telematics on vehicles to position parts to help parts availability. Commonality, we talked about 3D printing. Neil mentioned it keeps him up at night, right? The visual I'll try to forget, right? In the basement in his shorts. It's going to be hard. To me, it's an opportunity. Okay? It's a reality. It's not going away. Right? We'll see how far it goes, how soon it peaks, all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, the parts that we don't want dealers stocking, using their money, their working capital in inventory on slow-moving parts, the parts that we don't want to be stocking, that tend to have the longer lead times, customers got to wait 3, 5, 10, 15, 30 days, make those on 3D printing. Right? Why not? It's an opportunity for us and the dealers. We get a feed from our dealers every day where we're talking about using the dealers as a business partner. When we started this program that we call Suggested Stocking Assortment in 2013, and we now get the data from every dealer every day on their part sales and their inventory, 60% of dealer inventory was on parts that hadn't sold in 12 months. Our dealers combined carry about as much inventory as we do, and we carry 240 million, 250 million worth of inventory. Our 1,000 dealers between Audi and VW combined carry about that level of inventory. And 60% of their inventory was on stuff that had not sold in the last 12 months. How does that happen? Is the parts manager smarter than the system? Are we running promos on parts they don't need? Have parts changed? Have the dynamics changed, et cetera? So when we went into this process, viewing them as a business partner, that number is about 47, 48% now. Hasn't completely moved the needle, but that needle that it's moved, it's improved the quality of our dealer inventory about $40 million. And it's moved it. They've actually brought their total inventory down, combined, and they've moved about 30, 35 million of it from non-moving to moving. Right? Now, the way to fix that is to have an unlimited return program, right? They can send all the garbage back to you, but their garbage is going to be my garbage, right? Which is a financial play. So you got to set up processes to incentivize dealers to do the right thing the way you've designed your system and your process. And that's what we've tried to do. That's a huge one for us. Okay? And that's the retail inventory management bit on there. Everyone's got a different definition of what retail inventory management is. It goes from a suggestion to automatic stock replenishment. I'm just sending it to you. Right? It usually comes with a guaranteed buyback if it doesn't move, et cetera. But we've gone to a hybrid RIM type system because we view them as business partners to service the vehicle owner. Okay? So thought was, how do you keep service parts high? There's several things you can do near term, long term. And to me, it's just, you got to start thinking about what's our business going to look like? Right? Is it technology? The electric cars we talked about earlier, they're here. We're going to have over 1 million of them on the road by 2025. It may not seem like a lot. It's 1 million people that want their cars fixed or kept running. Okay? So with that, hopefully a few things for you to think about. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Evan. That's good. Thank you very much, Anu. Another interesting presentation, challenging what's happening ahead, and looking at, I'm not sure in any of the presentations we can really expect to hear the absolute solutions, but it's a good opportunity to share the concerns, ideas, and how we think the industry's going to be progressing. Next up, we'd like to hear a presentation, and I'll make sure, Neil, if you've got your pencil ready in case there's anything else you want to steal from John. John Goyoni, the Department Head of Parts Logistics for BMW North America. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. I'm going to warn you, I'm an Italian guy from New Jersey, so the hands are going to move a lot during this. And I'll be walking around, so if it looks like I'm making a pizza, I'm not really. So let's talk about the BMW point of view. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the same problems we got over there. I took Louis' bullet points, kind of addressed each point, and we'll go through them real quick for you. So complexities to keep that fill rate high. The challenges are there. We have a lot of it. Anu's getting it with Audi. We got it with BMW already. The variants abound. They are continuing to rise. We've kind of plateaued, but I have 31 models. And when you add engines to that, I got over 100 variants to look at for BMW and Mini alone. Now you add my motorcycle dealers to that, and I got another 26 models to deal with. So variants, space, unique sheet metal. I got to find the space to keep that stuff. But we also have a very similar challenge with the finance guys. We've all got a controller out there with their foot on our neck, some to one more degree or another. 65% of a new stuff, 50% of deal stuff, and about 70% of mine are bought overseas. So I have that FX rate issue as well that you really need to stay diligent with. So those financial pressures are always there. And the ultimate pressure is the customer expectation, especially in that premium luxury segment. It's high. The order or the response cycle for the product keeps getting compressed as well. So we've got a lot of challenges. We wouldn't have it any other way. That's why we're in this area in service parts. So to give you kind of an idea of what we do at BMW, I want to just take you through the network real quick and give you an overview of where we're at and what we do. We have 340 BMW dealers out there. We have about 110, 120 Mini dealers, and we've got a motorcycle network as well. A lot of seasonality in those motorcycle guys, which adds a challenge as well. The distribution network that we have, it's 6. You'll see the logos up there. They're in the main metro areas. We think we're in a good spot right now as far as the network placement goes. About 2.5 million square feet, about 700 great people out there working in those places and doing everything every day. 1.5 million inbound lines and about 13 million outbound lines. We're rather modest. We are a small automaker. We make great cars, but volume-wise, I'm a rounding error to these guys over here right now. When we talk about keeping the fill rate up, we do have a 98% fill. Thanks for setting me up with that one. It's a network fill, though, and it's routing. A lot of routing there, a lot of referrals. So the focus is always, or continues to be, on that facing fill. Nobody wants to route parts. They get damaged, they get lost, whatever, things happen. So we continue to look at that facing fill. Most of my guys are anywhere between 95 and 93. Got some challenges in some older facilities where now with all the variants, I'm space constrained. So that's where we go ahead and we try to look at how we expand where we need to expand. We do some lead DC planning as well. I have a very large warehouse in Pennsylvania. So when I get 4 hits on something in country, I'll put at least one of those pieces in my Nazareth facility. That way I'm not air freighting it from Germany, I'm at least just air freighting it from Pennsylvania. So that selective stocking piece continues to work. I got about 10,000 SKUs that roll on and off that program, and it seems really effective in lowering my air freight. We started a model warehouse out west. We had a warehouse out west, and then just envisioned a place where I didn't have to store Christmas decorations and dealer furniture and everything else, and really just get the garbage out of there and focus on service parts in that facility. And the lessons we learned from that, we continue to apply throughout the network. So it's been a good run. We've only been doing it for about 1.5 years now, and it's just a grind, a daily grind, and we continue to learn and improve. And once again, I explained, the expansion is just based on relocation, or the relocation or expansion is based on growth, where we're at and where we're going. I'm expanding my Stockton RDC right now. We just finished and went live a few weeks ago. And already moving into the space, I'm seeing the fill because the yard's not backed up like it was. So things are happening. We're replacing our Jacksonville RDC, our oldest one. Sometime late next year, that'll go live. So this is our network in a nutshell and what we're trying to do to keep that service level high. Now we talk about an e-commerce world. And for me and these guys as well, e-commerce is just on-demand. So back in 2010, my Germans came over and said, we want to do a dealer metropolitan distribution center. So the priority was customer satisfaction, trying to get the cars out the same day. Those loaner cars are expensive. Those fleets add up. And another happy piece is that the fourth level, you can compete with that wholesale a little bit more. So we went ahead and we went into 5 major metros. You'll see them there on the stars: Boston, New York, New Jersey, DC, Miami, and then LA. And we went into shared warehouses, and we set up our own warehouse within a warehouse, basically. Full 3PL out there. And we took about 20,000 SKUs. And we went with a different delivery model because I could only fit these parts in Sprinter vans. But now I could do 3 same-day deliveries, hot shot shipments to those major metros. 9 o'clock in the morning, they get it by 11, 11 they get it by 1, 1 they get it by 3. It's worked really well. We love the program so much, the dealers did as well, that we said, okay, let's add the virtual DMDCs. Let's look at those logos. And anybody I can touch from an RDC, I'll do same day too. So I'm happy to say, and once again, smaller volume maker, my 15-year car park is about 3 million cars. And I can hit 50% of my car park with this program 3 times a day. So it's pretty powerful. We could use that to our advantage. The service guys who get it are using it well. It's a service offering, more so than a parts offering. But the parts guys really can use it to build that 4th level in those relationships. So what's next for this one? We keep pushing our German colleagues. What's next? Come on, what are we doing next? No blimps, just where are we going? DMDC 2.0, we're going to look at assortment. We're going to see do we need to put slow movers in there? Are we really impacting the shop throughput like we need to? Do I need to get that eccentric bolt that's used for a rear differential on an M4 and at least have one of those nearby so we can get that car down the road the same day? Or do we look at it as lifestyle and apparel? We sell a lot of clothes. Do my dealers have to store one of every size? Or can they just have samples and say, Mr. Swartz, with your BMW, which I'm going to sell you eventually, I can get you that jacket in that size by the time I get your car fixed. 2 hours. Things like that. So we're excited about where we can go with this. It costs, don't get me wrong. Let's talk about technology. OnStar came very early. BMW's had a very strong telematics backbone as well. Now we're really getting actionable data via the telematics, and we're using it, and they're building those applications. So the key now is to integrate that into the service processes at the dealerships. So I can ping a car. If I know that guy's coming in tomorrow or 2 days from now, I can ping that car, I can get the condition-based service, and I can try to prepare better and maybe even order some parts if I need them ahead of time. So actionable data, not predictive yet, but actionable in that at least you can get a picture before they come in. Change the experience. Another area is frictionless service or service elsewhere. I don't know if it shocks anybody, but some people don't like going to car dealerships. I don't know. Okay. We have great mobile assistance programs. We have great telematics data. Why can't we go out and fix the cars where they are? Depends on the repair, of course. So when we talk about electric, the shift to electric vehicles, yeah, it hasn't affected my distribution centers immensely yet, but we are pretty electric at BMW. We've got the iCars out there. I've got an electric 7, an electric 5, and electric 3. So one of each of my series, we've got plug-in electrics now, and we continue to go in that direction. So a very good piece of momentum. But what I'm noticing is electric means lightweight, carbon fiber. That stuff's not easy to source and get, and it's very expensive. So that's where my challenges, I think, are coming right now. But then also on the electric side, you got these batteries, you got disposal of these batteries, and now you've got retailers that need to handle them. So it's just more hazmat, but it's different hazmat. So we need to make sure everybody's safe and trained. And then on the distribution center side, our guy from Ryder, who's got the best job in the world, is he still here? He left. He talked yesterday a little bit about the charging stations proliferating. And what we did at our distribution centers, at least, is we said, oh, well, we put chargers in. We got a few chargers at each location now. But now we invite the public in to hang out in our lobby. And we set up an electric lounge where they can come in while they're charging, stay out of the rain or whatever, and actually get exposed to the brand. Even the folks who drive Priuses can come in. Anybody comes in. So we're building relationships with folks who aren't even BMW drivers, but they're showing up at our places because they know there's a charger there and it's not getting used. So good stuff like that. And now when we talk about production and service parts getting closer together, we're a little bit, I think, a little bit behind some of the folks up here and in the industry. Spartanburg, we have a great facility in Spartanburg. It's turning out to be the largest plant for BMW. So on the service parts side, we just set up a facility nearby to inbound our 1/10 of 1% of the inventory that's coming to us. But now we're snuggling up a little closer to that procurement area. I already see opportunities with packaging, getting back to segmentation, trying to take some of that value-added stuff out of my RDCs and put it in the CDC down here. So it's called the Continental Distribution Center. It went live a couple of weeks ago. We're very proud of it. I'm driving up there right after this meeting. And we'll be the sole exporters of the product being built, the spare parts being produced here to the world by about 2019. So we're very happy. That's about all I have. I hope I wasn't funny, Louis. And I appreciate all your time, and I look forward to talking to you more about it.
Thank you very much, John. That was great. Thank you very much, John. Another great presentation, sharing with us what some of the great things that BMW are doing. So we've heard the 3 different presentations there. A lot of similar challenges, slightly different solutions. But now it's your turn to make your comments, ask your questions, and the usual kind of rules apply. Please raise your hand, wait for the microphone so we can hear you. Say your name and the company name, and then make your comment or ask your question. So I don't know if anybody wants to start off. Okay, and also the usual rules apply in the sense that you're not going to lunch any earlier by not asking questions. So we've got a few questions, prepared. One of the things which I think is something perhaps we can learn from for production and inbound logistics is the benchmarking you guys do in service parts, the collaboration you kind of have, particularly through the Carlisle group. Is that, if you can share us a little bit more about how valuable it is and what lessons that perhaps we can learn from what the production and other parts of the industry can learn from it. Do you really share good information with them? Are you still holding back stuff and the benefits that you get from work by that close collaboration?
Are you referring to production parts collaboration or?
Well, at the moment, I'm looking at what you guys are doing that could then be used by production parts. I'm not sure so much, and at this stage, I'm not talking about service parts and production collaborating. I think that production parts logistics don't collaborate very much at all with other car makers. In service parts, you do. You do collaborate more.
Now, at least for us, we do collaborate on outbound logistics quite a bit with other manufacturers, but it's usually done through the carriers because when we're reaching out to especially rural areas, a lot of times I know that our Toyota Lexus parts are riding on the same trucks with the BMW parts perhaps, or Volkswagen parts, or Mercedes, whoever it may be. And if it can provide the right level of service consistently, that's what we care about. It's really up to the carriers to decide whether they want to do joint logistics to help reach some of those harder to get to areas. And it's worked very well for us. I think it's pretty common. I think we probably all do a little bit of that today.
Wait, without sounding like a commercial for the Carlisle Group, a little different take on your question. I think they've been doing this for 25 years. Here's the value that I see that they've added, because in my prior two companies, here's how we use them. First thing they do is they get everyone involved, and they work for common definitions of metrics as best as possible. If you asked all three of us today how we measure fill, or if you had 17 auto companies up here, there'll be slight differences. Do you include new model? Do you include campaign? Those types of things. There's always slight, is it piece-based? Is it line-based? There's always differences. So the first value that I think the benchmarking on the service side adds that production doesn't do is common definitions. The second, I think, is it helps validate where you are and justify investments if you truly want to improve service. That's how we have used Carlisle to a great extent. You sit down with the finance types, right? Go explain to someone in finance, my sales are flat to down, models are up, I'm out of space, and I need 2 new warehouses. Right? Get the hell out of my office, get back on the plane, go back home. I mean, so what you do is you say, look, if we truly are focused on service, here's where the industry is. This is what it's going to take for us to get there, and this will eventually get us to the sales that we're looking for to justify it, right? Because the other way is you put the building in, it reduces freight costs, and you try to justify the facility based on your own internal costs. Try getting someone in the sales activity to sign up to increase sales because of better service or another building. You'll never get it. You simply will not get a business case with increased sales, with increased service. How do you quantify it? So they've helped us get there. And then what I think they've done in addition to that is kind of like we're doing here today. What's out there in the future? It gets us thinking commonly as a industry. And then what I really like that we come out of, because I think the conference was just a couple weeks ago in Dallas, and both Neil and John were there. I think the companies, when you say, are you holding some stuff back? I think there's pretty good sharing on, and I hate the term best practices. I just think there's better practices. But I learn what's going on by getting to know these gentlemen, right? And then talking about it, because we're really not competing against each other, right? We're competing against the aftermarket for our business, right? And the volumes that we have, John said he's got 3 million VIOs, 15-year car park. Between Audi and VW, we've got about 5.5, 6, right? We're not Ford, we're not GM, we're not Fiat Chrysler. There's things that we can do together, like Neil mentioned with the outbound. There's parts of this country I can't get to with a dedicated truck justified on my volumes alone. 2 of us or 3 of us together, maybe we can, right? So we all benefit. So those are the types of things that I think come out of the benchmarking that I think are missing on the production side or vehicle logistics that we've been trying to get to.
Yeah, I would say the best thing, it's like group therapy, right? You really lament and you get to understand everybody else's challenges out there. The data aspect, they're heavy into data, and that supporting data helps in a lot of different ways. And to be honest with you, nobody's sharing any secret sauce. We've got a much more dynamic challenge with service parts, we think, than the production logistics piece of things. And it's good to understand what we're doing, including that retailer relationship and how you're dealing with all of those independent businessmen out there, getting them to manage their inventory like we need them to manage it for our ultimate customers. So it's a good community, and I think it makes us better.
I want to add to that. couple other things. One is that with Carlisle, we get heavy truck in there as well, ag. And you talk about companies that really know supply business and how to expedite and those kind. It's those companies because of the business they're in. And now they've added power sports too, right? And they've always had some motorcycle. I think Harley's been in, out, and so forth.
Occasional airline.
Yeah. So it's really gives you a view of of a similar business, but not the same, right? So you get a chance to see how other companies approach these activities. And frankly, I think we all use it as a developmental opportunity too. I see that, Caterpillar, I think at Carlisle must have had 30 people.
Yep.
And I'm sure they weren't all there because they were contributing. I think a lot of them were learning.
And I think the Daimler truck guy brings his finance guys. So they get a great awareness of the challenges we're up against, which helps later when you go knocking on their door looking for space.
That's a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Was there a question there?
Ben Guka with Sealed Air. We do protective packaging solutions. I had a quick question. With the customers needing parts as quickly as possible and the need to go into same day and expedited shipping, how big of a challenge is damage in transit to meeting those goals? Because I know you mentioned all your fill rates being 97, 98%, but with FedEx and UPS or whoever your carrier is handling those parts, how often do you find your dealers having to deal with components not making it there in the right shape, and then your customer's not satisfied, and that's affecting the relationship?
Sure. I'll take this one to start. Damages are, they're going to happen. We do a lot of reusable cages. 95% of my shipments dedicated delivery, so they're getting in trucks, whether they're shared service or not. So damages, if we're continually working on packaging engineering, feedback from the claims and everything that we get, but it's not a huge thing. When you look at our same-day delivery out of our DMDCs, we're keeping the assortment small because they have to be, there's not a lot of automation at those DMDCs. You don't have any lifts, and those people come up and they hand load that Sprinter van. So, we're pretty good. We're pretty low with the same-day damage rate as well.
I mean, from our perspective, just put some numbers on it. Dedicated truck deliveries out of our buildings, less than one damage per 1,000 lines shipped, right? I mean, best in class is around 1.5. We're slightly below that, which is good. Add in errors, wrong pick, missed quantities, same impact on the customer, right? So when you put all that in, we're under 2 total, right? which is where we want to be, and you always want to get better, right? When you start putting referrals into it, so the facing fill debate versus system fill, damage typically doubles.
Yeah.
Right, so it goes from 0.6 to 1.2, 1.3, right? All right, not huge on the blip. When you expedite it in from overseas, it goes up 4 to 6 times. So we're running 5 errors per 1,000 in that range, right? 4 to 6 when it comes in from overseas. You can fix some of that with packaging and all that kind of stuff, but it's all one-offs because the system's not set up that way. The master depot in Castle, it's not a normal routine for them, so it kind of throws them off. But here's the way we look at it. I don't care if it's half, 4, or 5. It pisses the customer off, right? So what we try to teach our associates is that 1 error per 1,000, we're shipping 13, roughly the same as John, 13 million lines per year. We're making 40 customers upset per day. And just do the math, right? And if you're one of those 40, I could care less if you got same day, next day, whatever. You're going to have to wait until the next part arrives. Right, so how do you fix that?
So from our perspective, I agree with everything. Say our rates are about the same. We do a lot of overpack for anything that's going to go by air. Some things we won't ship by air just because we know they're just not going to make it through the expedited systems. Our rule for referrals is if we can, we go ground break bulk to the next closest PDC. Next would be air break bulk, depending on the distance. So they're going, again, staying within our control, being consolidated together, and then being broken out at the facing PDC. And then last choice would be air direct to the dealer. It is certainly a damage avoidance, but it's also a cost avoidance strategy. It works pretty well. But you have to have the right network and enough PDCs. John has 6.
Yep.
Or 6 PDCs, we have 15. So we have a little more opportunity to do that kind of groundwork.
Okay, thank you. Another question over there, please.
Carlos Barahona with Universal Logistics. John, you mentioned the fact that the dealer can go to the customer now, or that maybe something you guys can look into. We are talking about Amazon, and that's how everybody within different industries are going towards the same thing, tending to the customer. What's stopping you guys from making that move where the dealer goes to the customer every time instead of the customer going to the dealer?
Say it again a little louder, please. The last part. What was the question exactly?
Yeah, so what's stopping everybody, not only BMW, but everybody in the industry from going, the service going to the customer to fix the part, give them the part, and then...
Yeah, there's cost. I'll be honest with you. We're committed to our customer experience. This thing is not a free system, so the dealer has to pay a bit of a delivery charge. That doesn't cover everything, but we feel we need to be out there and be in those forward locations because of that premium luxury expectation out there right now. So it costs money to do this. There's a lot of management behind it. I got 5 different labor contracts with those facilities and 5 different transportation contracts, right, that you have to do. So there's overhead on the supplier management piece. My RDC's kind of like a parent-child relationship, so they're constantly refreshing that inventory, doing physical inventories over at those sites because they own them. So it's a commitment, and you need to be committed to it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, when we do roadside assistance, we're going to the customer to fix the car, right? So you can use the companies that do that, right? Azuro, Allstate, et cetera. We have Audi dealers with Audi assist similar to what BMW does, right? These mobile Q5s that'll go out there and service the vehicles as well. Everyone does it with glass, right? I think it's moving there. I think it is a cost debate. I think it's a commitment debate. Start thinking of, I was at a presentation in New York where a gentleman from Morgan Stanley came out. He said something that made me think. He said, your car, your vehicle, is the most underutilized asset in the world. 24 hours in a day, the average person's driving X miles each way. The car's being used for about an hour a day on average in the US, right? And that's 4%. So you've got 96% downtime. So why the hell aren't you out there figuring out how to service the car in the 96% downtime where it is? Right? And you sit there and you go, wow, he's spot on, right? Now that's going to lead to another generation, right? Growing up, 16 years old, mom picked me up from high school. I went, got my license, came back, had my car. My son didn't get his license till he was 17, could care less. There's other ways to get around. So when you get back to the customers and the expectations, I think that's what we got to figure out, right? It's sitting somewhere, it's down. How do you do it? And not every repair needs a hoist.
I think there is an opportunity there, probably more so than there has been in the past, because you wouldn't have the diagnostic capability that's as mobile as it is today. You don't have the telematics to even know what's wrong with the car, potentially even before you get there to bring the parts with you. A lot of the repairs can be done without getting underneath the car or anything that you wouldn't want to do in somebody's driveway. So I think it is in our future, but it does have limited opportunities because of the cost, and frankly, I think it where you're just going to be out installing a part, like a special order part, customer ordered something, you can go just replace it. You already know what you're going to do. You have the part, take care of the customer. I think that's a great opportunity there. Some simple diagnostics, maybe some recall campaigns, those kinds of things where it can be done, and you know exactly what it is you're going to do when you get there. That's the key to making it efficient.
You can stick Neil's 3D printer in the back of the car.
Yeah, and if you have a 3D printer, then
Right?
it's all done.
Yeah.
Just make a new car.
Okay, a question at the back, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Ricardo with Cloudleaf. I'm a technologist, so a big-time user of online systems and self-service, and I own or have owned in the past all 3 brands of the panel. So question for the panel. do you have any visibility or input or influence at the individual dealership when you try to schedule appointments or order a part? Because one of the most frustrating part for me is when I go online trying to find a part, either the system crash or page not found or part not found. It doesn't give you any choices, basically, of actually accomplishing the task that you want to do it from home.
I'm kind of following Volkswagen's lead because I think you guys are really great on online sales, e-commerce sales. And I believe that we probably use some of the same companies like Simple Part and so forth to provide that front-end experience. But one of the things that we're all challenged with is that because dealers are independent business people, in order to provide a consistent experience, we have to get them to agree to do business in a standardized way when it comes to e-commerce. As I mentioned earlier on the Toyota side, we're late to the party, but our dealers are anxious for this because they do realize that that kind of experience can really turn off a customer. I've had the same experience working for the company. I actually was on a train in Japan looking for a part for a customer, a really oddball part. I found it at a dealership in Chicago. This is all on my cell phone, right? I go on, I ask them, do you have the part? Can you send it to me? 3 months ago, I still haven't heard anything, right? So I think there's an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. This could go a lot of different ways. To me, the first thing is, if you're a customer, do we make our catalog available to you so you can identify what parts you need? What are the dealers going to think? Right, independent businessmen, franchisees, we sell parts through them. There's ways you can get the part number, right? But we still sit here and say that catalog is still here. If you want to grow e-commerce, remember the old Sears catalogs? It's got to be universal, right? So you can get that information out there. Then you get into the whole e-commerce debate and all this stuff about crashing. The scheduling appointments I always think is interesting. Call up a dealership, wife's got a problem with the brakes on her car, and they tell her they can get her in 10 days. Doesn't feel comfortable driving there. Are you seriously? Right? And I don't know about you, I picked up the phone, called the dealership, she was there next day, wrong answer. Right? Customer calling in, how do you take care of that? So there's a lot of work being done on our end on time to make an appointment, right? Online scheduling, that's huge. You got a lot of dealers out there for all of us, which one of the interesting things that I think some of these dealers are doing, and it's cross brands, but each brand's at a different level, is keeping in touch with a customer with a service tech with little video clips of their car being repaired. Right? As part of an instant message, as part of a text. So you know where everything stands. That's where this is all going. Right? And then the infrastructure support it, and people smarter than me that'll figure it out. Right? But that's what we need, right? I mean, I think it was Neil's slide that showed the lake, data lake. We tend to use that same term. It's all out there. How do you put it together? How do you take care of it? Do you have dealer standards? Are there standards you require to be a Volkswagen or Audi dealer to maintain the dealership, right? That's a touchy subject, right? But you got to have some of those conversations to get to where you're talking about.
I think on the BMW side, we're fortunate. We're a little smaller, so high 90s, we have the same appointment scheduling. So the experience, you go online, you're going to get a pretty good experience to schedule that appointment and keep the vendor out of it. But the catalog is interesting that Anu touches on. Because we work for German companies, they continue to tinker, parts continue to supersede because they're never happy and they want to make that product better and better. Yeah? So it's okay to have a catalog up there, but that catalog's not going to be 100% accurate. And because the evolution and the product keeps kind of getting...
Unless it's real-time online.
Yep, unless it's real-time online. So that comes with better authoring systems and everything else behind the scenes, and that's behind the engineering curtain, really, and the product development piece. So I agree. Catalogs need to improve. That'll help build that accessibility for you.
I mean, are they easy to use? I mean, one of our big mantras is easier to do business with.
Nope.
Several years ago, dealers had to use up to 45 screens to order parts from us.
Yeah.
Are you friggin' kidding me? Right now, some of them aren't used very often, right? Information didn't carry over screen to screen.
Yeah.
Right, we've launched the new parts up front, parts on command system. Everything's basically on one page, and there's 4 more that you may get into. You can click, point, click, you can get tracking information. You want to be the provider of choice. You got to be easy to do business with. And we'll get there, but we're always lagging because that's not how we think.
Question at the back, please.
Hi, Justin Walzak with Meritor. I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts. You touched a little bit on tariff and potential impact, and kind of wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on the impact of the automotive industry and maybe how you guys are potentially thinking of dealing with it.
So, was impact of tariffs on?
Yeah, tariffs, and you said it's a potential risk, and
Yeah.
you know it's going to have a big effect on all of us from an automotive standpoint. What are your guys' thoughts and how you guys think it's going to shape the industry itself?
Yeah, I mean, 2 words. One, weird, then you can fill in the second one, blank. He just got it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's TBD. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that have to go through it. Depending on what comes out of it, there'll be some hard conversations on what you do in individual markets, right? Individual parts. I think we'll see. I'm always a big believer in do what's right for the consumer. Right? Is this the right thing to do for the consumer? Right? And regardless of what I think, right, there's powers greater than me, we'll adapt. That's what's going to happen. We can try to influence, right, that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, stuff will happen, and we will adapt.
No, I got nothing.
I'm an open borders guy. I mean,
Yeah.
from that standpoint, we don't produce much in Mexico today, just a few trucks, but we are building a new plant. It's going to build Corollas shortly, and it'll open in mid-19, so we don't have as much of a stake in that, although we do have quite a few suppliers there. I look at this as just from a consumer standpoint. I don't think anybody wins in this. I don't think it's necessarily going to create more jobs here or whatever the intent would be if we're talking about Mexico in particular, which I guess you're referencing. But in general, tariffs have not served the economy of either country whenever we've had those in the past. And often the industries find a way to work around them. I mean, we did for years. There was a thing, it may even still be out there, I think it's called the chicken tax. It's a reason why we used to build trucks in Japan and then put the bodies on, put the truck bed on when they arrived in Los Angeles for many, many years, because then we could consider them to be a part instead of a vehicle. Yeah, so it doesn't, it's not productive for the economy, my thought.
Same story. Time will tell on this one. We'll have to see. And we're service parts. We react to what's happening out there. We're used to getting punched in the gut daily. That's what we do.
Yeah. I mean, the bigger picture, obviously, right, once again, mind smarter than mine. Will it reduce costs for consumers and increase choice?
Fair question.
Probably not.
And if it doesn't, then okay. Right? Different conversation.
Okay, a question from this very unfunny guy at the front.
No,
I think you might do because the people with the microphones are actually talking to each other. Got a question at the front, please.
Yeah, well, Neil, thanks for your vote. It's good to be at least, someone's voting for me for the second best hair on the Automotive Logistics team. Although I'm glad I'm not the only pirate anymore. It was John's beard, at least.
I do have beard envy.
I wanted to pick up on the statistic that you quoted. I think was 60% of the parts at your dealers unsold in a year. I think that's pretty staggering. I guess first would be if the other panelists have a similar metric, if you've looked at that. And the second would be, I mean, what can some of the strategies be here? I mean, as you say, the dealers are independent businesses, so I guess you can't tell them everything what to do. But can there be, more data provided, something with the returns policy? This is something I know Toyota made an adjustment to a few years ago. So maybe we can talk along those lines a little bit.
What was the 60%?
60%, when we started this in 13, all dealers combined, 60% of the inventory had not moved in the last 12 months.
So a lot of the industry has been using RIM, some form of RIM, which is a great tool, very complex, probably pretty expensive to implement and maintain. We looked at that, and we thought that what we really need to do to improve dealer inventory conditions is to make it easier for the dealers to do business with us by allowing them to have the ability to stock whatever they need for their customers and then return the parts to us when they no longer need them. Now, having said that, there's a couple of guardrails that go with it. The two guardrails are very simple. If you order the part for a customer, return it to us within 90 days, free of charge. If you order it for your inventory, we want you to keep it for 9 months, because that's kind of an industry standard. 0 sales in 9 months, you would return a part. That, by default, if the dealer stays within those two guidelines, will take them from 0 to 75 in terms of being a better parts manager, just by staying within those guidelines. So it was a little different approach to supporting dealer inventory management. I would much prefer to have a RIM because I can do a lot more with it. No one was going to give me the RIM. I couldn't use John's. So we had to do something a little different, but it's unique in the industry. We'll see where it goes. So far, it's working pretty well for us, and our dealers seem to be pretty happy.
Yeah, on the BMW side, we're I would say about 30% obsolescence at that dealer inventory level. Then you've got that baby obsolescence in training, probably another 15 to 20% on that, as far as those numbers go. Retailer inventory management's huge, and you got to lead them to water, and you got to give them tools and coach them through it, because it's all about that end customer, you BMW drivers who drive into that service lane. If we have the right part there, that's the win. So I think all of us here do that. I think Anu does it one of the best in the industry with the RIM right now, and we all continue to focus on it. Doesn't go away.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts about that, because this could be a whole 5 hours on itself, because it's
Focus day.
Yeah. It happens for a lot of different reasons. Okay? You have to work with your brand sales colleagues on your terms and conditions with dealers, on your discount programs. So we gave discounts basically on what percentage you ordered on stock order from us, right, in the past. Think about this. Stock order is the slowest way to get part to a dealer, whether it was weekly or whatever. Now it's overnight, right? The same day for some of these companies. We incentivize you, if you didn't have it, to order it the slowest method possible from us. Seriously? If you don't have it on your shelf, I'm going to give you money to order it the slowest way possible. I don't care less if you got a customer waiting. So you have to change things like that. So we now incentivize them to stock the right parts. So that gets to, do you give them a discount on parts that do not sell, that are slow sellers? Yep. That way, if a dealer wants to make the choice to stock that part, do you allow a return privilege on, we haven't got there yet, but do you allow return privilege on slow-moving stuff? Dealer wants to make that choice. Customer comes in, it's a part that sells once a year. You want to give him a discount to stock it? Do you want him to be able to return it if he was stocking it? Right? Those are the things so you have to tie your terms and conditions into what you're trying to accomplish. And that's the ultimate goal, right? To make everything fit together, to work together, so you don't have conflicting interests. That's where you get into trouble. Go run a promo program on spark plugs. How many different spark plugs do you guys stock? Right? 1,000?
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to go run a promo program on spark plugs this month. I could care less which ones you bought. I'm just interested in you buying $100,000 of them. Right? Really? Right? So those are the things you got to get away from. We had a dealer that had $700,000 worth of inventory. $600,000 was oil. Met every objective we gave them,
Yep, hit his target.
right? Hey, those are the horror stories. Those are, and I do that as an extreme to give you an idea, but that's what you find. And they're doing exactly what we incentivize them to do, which is what we would do. They're businessmen.
Well, one of the things we were finding before we had this policy is when we actually went out and studied this, is that there were a lot of dealers, because they earned a 7% return allowance, felt they had to use it every month, so they would return parts to us whether they should be returning them or not, and then just to buy them again. And I believe it was something around 23% of the parts that dealers returned to us, the same dealer would buy that part back within 9 months. And it tells us these are just boomerang parts, right? And it's not using our time well. It certainly isn't using the dealer's time well, and it's not serving the customer. So something had to change.
We're looking at different ways of measuring. One more thing on this is the data lakes. We talk about all this data that's usable. We're finally getting RO level fill rate, same day fill, off the shelf fill. So that, once again, getting back to those T&Cs and incentivizing these guys, when I can see what they're doing to help that customer get down the road the same day, we'll be able to lever that and get them to focus on it. And that's kind of what the data's going to help. We're getting there.
Yeah, the other one was just, it's awareness. How many dealer principals knew that stat? How many parts managers looked at it that way?
Yeah.
So just simple getting it and putting awareness out there moves the needle.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think that was a very interesting session, some very comprehensive presentations and a great Q&A. So I'd like to thank the panel for their participation. Thank you. Again, just a couple of reminders. If you're crazy enough to be leaving early, please complete the evaluation forms and hand them back, maybe at the front desk. But otherwise, we've got a couple of great sessions still to come. Just after lunch, starting at 2 o'clock, session on thinking, how to think differently from a supply chain perspective and how to move the industry forward. And then a final session, which will be starting at 3:45. I think we've got it down at 4 o'clock, but we'll start it at 3:45, a final panel discussion with Honda, Volkswagen, Georgia Tech and others. So a great ending to the conference as well. But please enjoy your lunch and we'll see you back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you.